Jessica Hawthorne never expected her quiet life in downtown Boston to be interrupted by a single envelope, cream-colored and sealed with wax. The handwriting on the front was elegant, almost regal. No return address. Just her full name, Miss Jessica Ann Hawthorne. Inside was a deed to a house. It took her 3 reads to believe it. A relative she'd never heard of, Aunt Marigold Everly, her mother's estranged cousin, had passed away and left Jessica an estate in Ashwood Hollow, a small town tucked between ancient forests and forgotten highways. With no surviving family, Marigold had named Jessica the sole heir. Jessica had never heard of Ashwood Hollow. There were no pictures of it online, only a few vague references in old county records and a blurry map from 1973. The town seemed to have fallen through the cracks of modern life, like it had chosen to stay hidden. And the house? It was called Everly Manor. 2 days later, Jessica found herself behind the wheel of a rented SUV, winding through dense woods under a canopy of crimson and amber leaves. Autumn had painted the world in flames, and the road narrowed until it was barely more than a trail. As she reached the town limits, a hand-carved wooden sign greeted her. "Welcome to Ashwood Hollow, where the maples speak." She slowed the vehicle, uneasy. Trees leaned in close, their branches tangled like fingers whispering secrets. A cool breeze swept across her windshield, and for a moment, she swore she heard a voice in the wind say her name. The manor. The Everly estate stood at the edge of the woods, isolated yet commanding. It was Victorian in structure, its red bricks darkened by moss and time. Ivy crept along the walls like veins, and towering maple trees loomed on all sides. A rusted iron gate creaked open as she approached, as if expecting her. Jessica stepped out of the car, the key from the envelope cold in her hand. The house seemed to exhale as she turned the lock and entered. Dust danced in the sunlight pouring through stained glass windows. The air smelled like old books and forgotten memories. The interior was beautiful. High ceilings, carved wood panels, antique furniture covered in white sheets. A grand staircase spiraled upward, and to her right, a parlor lay untouched, as if someone had just stepped out for tea a century ago. She found a letter on the entryway table. Same handwriting. To my dearest heir. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you are now the guardian of Everly Manor. This house is older than the town itself. Keep it safe. Never cut the trees. And listen when the maples whisper. They always warn before the hollow awakens. Marigold Everly. The town. Jessica decided to explore Ashwood Hollow the next morning. The town square was modest, with a bakery, a general store, a small library, and a diner that looked like it hadn't been remodeled since the 60s. The locals were polite but cautious. Whispers followed her. "You're the new Everly girl? She's moved into the manor." Did she hear it yet? At the diner, an older woman introduced herself as Clara Baines, the town historian. "You're brave to come here alone," Clara said, sipping tea. "Most folks wouldn't sleep a night in that house. Not after what happened to your aunt." "What had happened to her?" Jessica asked. Clara hesitated. She started acting strange. "Talking to trees," said the woods were watching her. Then one night she disappeared. No body, no note. Just gone. Jessica's heart pounded. "And no one looked for her?" "We tried," Clara said, voice low. "But some places don't want to be found." The whispers began. That night, the whisper started. At first, it was just wind, or that's what Jessica told herself. But then came the footsteps on the second floor, when no one else was there. The flickering lights. The soft tapping on the window, even though she was on the 3rd floor. And always, the whispers in the maple trees. One night, as she stood in the overgrown garden, Jessica finally heard the words clearly. The hollow was stirring. Chills crawled up her spine. The trees swayed without wind. A crow cawed overhead, then dropped a small bundle at her feet, a bundle of feathers and bone wrapped in red thread. She ran inside, locking every door. The basement. She hadn't explored the basement yet, but something drew her there. Maybe a dream, maybe the trees. With a flashlight in hand, She descended the stone steps. The basement was cold and lined with ancient brick walls. Shelves full of dusty jars and old tools lined one side, but in the far corner, beneath a torn curtain, was a wooden door she hadn't seen in the blueprints. She opened it. Beyond was a small room, circular, stone-lined, and silent. In the center stood an altar. On it, a worn book titled, The Chronicle of Ashwood Hollow. And on the final page, written in what looked like fresh ink, was her name. Jessica Hawthorne, the last Everly. The Watcher has returned. The Chronicle of Ashwood Hollow trembled in Jessica's hands. The ink on the final page, still wet, smudged beneath her fingers as she read her name again. Jessica Hawthorne, the last Everly. The Watcher has returned. She looked around the basement chamber, her breath fogging in the unnatural chill. Suddenly, a sharp wind burst through the room. Though there were no windows, no doors open. The candle above the altar flickered, and then died. Darkness. And then whispering. She awakens too soon? The bloodline stirs again. She must remember. Jessica stumbled backward, flashlight flickering wildly. She ran up the basement steps and slammed the door shut behind her. Clara's warning. The next morning, she rushed to the town library, where Clara Baines was shelving dusty books. Jessica slammed the chronicle down on the desk. What is this? What is the Watcher? Clara's face turned pale. Where did you find this? In the basement. The room beneath the manor. My name was written in it, in fresh ink. Clara sat down slowly. Jessica, you need to listen carefully. The Everly family, your family, wasn't just any lineage. They were bound to this land, chosen to protect it. From what? Clara looked out the window toward the woods. From what sleeps beneath the trees. The Hollow's secret. Clara explained that Ashwood Hollow was built on ancient soil, older than any town, older than even the earliest settlers. Long ago, a shadow had crept into the woods. Something powerful. Something that fed on silence, secrets, and blood. To keep it sleeping, an oath had been made. The Everly family would tend to the maple trees, sacred sentinels, rooted in ancient magic, and in return, the hollow would remain peaceful. But if the trees were harmed, or the oath forgotten, the hollow would awaken. Jessica remembered the letter. Never cut the trees. Listen when the maples whisper. Your Aunt Marigold failed to keep the balance, Clara whispered. She stopped listening. And she paid the price. The Broken Grove. Jessica returned to the manor with dread in her heart. She decided to walk the grounds and found something she hadn't noticed before, a section of the forest where the trees had been burned. Charred stumps, blackened soil, the scent of old smoke and decay. Someone had cut down part of the grove. The whispering was louder here, not gentle this time, but angry, urgent. The trees leaned in like accusing judges. A large stone stood in the middle of the scorched earth. On it were carvings, spirals, and runes, stained with something deep red. Jessica reached out to touch it. Suddenly, a flash, a memory not her own. A vision from the past. She saw her Aunt Marigold, standing before the stone, crying. I didn't mean to, she whispered. I just wanted to see what was beneath. Then, darkness exploded from the soil. Roots black as pitch coiled upward, wrapping around Marigold's legs. She screamed, and was pulled beneath the earth. Jessica gasped and fell backward, the vision gone. She lay there in the ashes, heart racing, as the trees whispered above. She broke the seal. The roots beneath. That night, Jessica couldn't sleep. The house moaned in the wind. The walls creaked like bones. And then the floorboards in her room shifted. She stepped closer. Suddenly, crack. One snapped beneath her foot, revealing a hollow space beneath the floor. She pulled the boards free and found a tunnel. Crawling inside with a lantern, she discovered a cavern beneath the house. Gnarled roots lined the walls, and in the center sat a stone table, identical to the one in the grove. But this one had a small wooden box atop it. Inside the box was a dagger, old and ornate, its hilt carved with maple leaves and its blade made of obsidian. A note beside it read, Only the blood of the Watcher can close the hollow. The decision. Jessica knew what she had to do. She returned to the grove at sunrise. The wind howled as she approached the stone, dagger in hand. The trees leaned closer than ever. She stood before the altar and sliced her palm. Blood dripped onto the carvings. The runes glowed faintly, then flared bright red. Suddenly, the earth shuddered. A deep rumble came from beneath her feet, and black roots burst upward again. But this time, they paused, hesitating. Jessica held out the dagger. "I am the Watcher now," she said, voice firm. "And I command you, return to the dark." The roots recoiled. The red glow intensified. One final burst of wind knocked her back, and then silence. Restoration. The trees stood still once more. The angry whispers faded into soft murmurs. Birds returned to the canopy, and sunlight pierced the gray clouds. The hollow had been calmed. Back in town, people noticed the change. The air was lighter. The unease lifted. For the first time in years, the residents of Ashwood Hollow smiled freely. Clara hugged Jessica tightly. "You did what no one else could. You remembered." Weeks later, Jessica stayed in the manor. She cleared out the basement, restored the house room by room. Every day she walked the grove, tending the trees, listening. And sometimes, just sometimes, they whispered to her in kind. Not warnings, but thanks. Epilogue. One autumn afternoon, Jessica received a new letter. No return address. Same wax seal. It read, "Guardians may rest, but the hollow never sleeps. When the leaves turn crimson, remember the pact." Jessica smiled, folded the letter, and placed it in the chronicle. As the wind rustled the trees outside, she whispered back, "I remember."